Welcome, folks. This is wealthcurated.com, and we're breaking out of our series on full auto, which is all things auto collectibles. And we're hitting the financial side hard today and got a special guest here who has been in the financial sector for a long time. But before we jump in, Mr. Jack Branch, the headlines today are disconcerting to say the least. I think the world is inching closer to some severe difficulty. There are all points bulletins for the Saudis and for America that the Iranians have an attack imminent. It seems to be a little bit heightened, more so than we've seen when we see these sort of reports. I think the world is significantly unstable. It's really interesting, though. We're in a world where collectible assets, which I talk a lot about, are breaking records week by week, maybe some slowdown there. So it's an interesting world, a lot at risk, and yet the uber rich have gotten uber richer, COVID and post-COVID. So, Jack, tell us about Pelican Family Office, who you are, what you do, and we'll jump into this topsy-turvy world and try and make sense of it.
Thank you, Bruce. Jack Branch, been in the financial sector over 20 years, got downsized by corporate America, saw that the financial advice being given was just not accurate. There's a lot of opinions, a lot of just different things motivating. And about 5 years ago, we moved out of the, dealing with consumers and we're moving more into the family office space. And if you don't know what that is, the Rockefellers, Carnegies, Vanderbilts, all back in the day, hired staffs of accountants, financial experts, risk managers to manage the family wealth so that it would continue in perpetuity. And what we find today, most people are spending more time on their, summer vacation than they are their wealth, and making sure that the government, the financial institutions, others don't confiscate it during their life or maybe one generation. So we work exclusively with forward-thinking accountants, not all accountants, only seeing business owners, trying to help them be more proactive and less reactive.
Really interesting. So the family dynamic, typically when people are looking at finances, they're looking at what's in front of them and don't necessarily have that bigger financial family picture front and center. It's legacy wealth, I like to say. And so that's what you guys are about. Legacy wealth right now, understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the long-term impacts in a really spooky world coming out of Halloween to keep that theme going. It's a bag of tricks and potential treats for some if they know what they're doing. But as we just referenced, the Iranian story, interestingly, as that's happened, we just got the numbers from the gold market. Gold is historically the safe haven asset of choice. Historically, it's the most proven asset in history. And we just saw in Q3 record-breaking numbers quietly for central banks and their amassing of gold, 300% higher than this time last year. So you have to ask what's happening, and that's an important question for you guys. I know you are about managing risk, but also opportunity. What's most critical for you right now in the world that we're in, COVID world, post-COVID? What sort of strategies are you utilizing most effectively?
It's defense more than offense. Many of our peers with, certain names on the outside of their buildings that look to be very safe and secure aren't really advising people in safe and secure manners. So what we've done, even 20 years and as of late, building this virtual family office environment is helping people, not lose money as much as just chase returns. We believe where your money resides, whether it's in commodities that have intrinsic value like gold or silver or other instruments, easily accessible, is more valuable sometimes than having things in derivatives and such that you can't even understand how they work. And so we try to keep it simple, keep the dynamics of a holistic plan versus let me just manage my silo of investments or risk management or real estate, whatever that might be, and look at it in congruent with all the pieces. And what I find today, really, you say world of tricks and risky treats, is a lot of the people listening to this are putting all their hopes in one or two people, thinking they're going to keep them financially independent now and forevermore. And you're putting a lot of stock in one or two people versus having a team. So we believe having a team of professionals around you, looking at offense and defense and these opportunities as they come along, having the dry powder is real essential. But it's interesting is more than ever, people have a lot of money on the sidelines still. And so what that tells me is they're not convinced about any one thing. So it is a scary world of tricks and treats. And, with COVID and, everything else that's changed this world we live in, it is pretty spooky at times.
So it's interesting. One of the things that we saw during COVID, it seems counterintuitive, but if you think about it, and I had sort of written and talked about this prior to COVID as we were really kind of sliding into it, my hunch was, and it proved to be true, and it's still true, that the uber rich got uber richer because the only business remaining out there went to them, these big conglomerates and big companies. And so that kind of world-class wealth was sitting around and to some degree trapped in homes, although they had more access to travel and do things, but they were still looking around for ways to chase beauty. And for them, that was fine art, high-end collectible cars, baseball cards, you name it. Those things they considered beauty hobbies for them, they got really vigorous about. So we've seen some of the greatest expansion we've ever seen there. But it's also true, we're seeing housing slowing down. We're seeing inflation way up despite the rhetoric that we're pitched on a daily basis, energy prices. We're hearing more and more about food shortages. Are there one or two things that you're talking to your clients about right now more often than you had in the past in reference to those things?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, having a team around you so we don't, overlook the blind spots. You mentioned collectibles. I mean, we've always been a believer in that, especially with wealthier people. But what's happening is the uber rich and the guys say worth 5 million to 100 million, which don't, mind you, isn't a decent amount of money, but it's not the uber rich, the billionaires, the multi-billionaires.
Right.
They're being very well underserved. They're going to XYZ or PDQ for advice that is like getting advice from the wolf guarding the hen house. So how can you expect to truly get objective, forward thinking, opportunistic ways to deploy capital if the only thing they want to do is put you in equities?
Right. So it's really,
not to say equities aren't a good place to be, but the old days, I believe, in buy and hold and cross your fingers and hold it forever have been changed by computer trading, high frequency trading. I mean, all these things that have evolved during COVID and even prior to that to give people competitive advantages in those sorts of things. So our advice is make sure you have the right people around you on the team. And that's kind of how you and I started talking, Bruce, was we had some blind spots, not really in the collectibles end, and that kind of is a niche that we may be able to partner with pretty significant.
So it's this team approach. What a lot of folks don't understand, no matter how smart they are, no matter how successful they are, to some extent, we all tend to specialize, right? But the big box approach to handling people's money, as you said, one or two people, typically one or two funds. And what most people don't know is that there is a lot of incentive for those people who are handling that money to put certain things in front of clients and to put their clients into certain things. A lot of people don't know that about the big box approach. So the team concept that you guys have is what's really fascinating to me. Flesh that out a little bit more, because when you say team, it doesn't really register for people in that big box approach. Tell us how that's important and how the different dynamics of your team help with this family money legacy wealth approach.
It's a great question. I mean, the traditional approach is retirement planning or estate planning or all these quote unquote areas that people say they're experts in. And all they're really doing is using math. Wealth equals money times rate times time. So if you tell them you need 20 million or you want 20 million, they take a snapshot, say we can get you these investments, yada, yada, yada. But what happens if COVID hits? What happens if you get sued? What happens if, you know, a breadwinner dies tomorrow, or you live to 100? So most of the plans we see done in an individual approach where one or two people are really steering the ship of the family have so many problems. They're not building in contingency plans. So the listeners to this podcast all have a banker, they have a CPA, hopefully they have a tax lawyer, they should have an investment person, an insurance person. But the question is, when do you get all those people in one room to talk about you? And so if it never happens, you get a plan that's fragmented, built on needs, not built on efficiencies or optimization. So therefore, the family, the wealth, everything never gets reached to the fullest potential because everyone's just playing, you know, offense, not defense, or I call it chess versus checkers.
Or at a minimum, each of those people, each of those specialists you just mentioned, are vying for their own piece of the pie, or totally focused on their part of the pie without access to what the other pieces are doing. And so just even with the best of intentions, there's not that kind of synergy. So what you're saying is you guys have all of that for each account, each family investment account, working as a team to make sure it's all managed cohesively. Is that right?
That's what we have been in our building. Yes. In fact, the whole United States now is wide open. That's one thing we did prior to COVID and continue to do, is work across state lines, because with technology and efficiency, you don't physically have to be with someone. Now, clearly, if they have a significant estate, we'll go there, Nashville, Portland, LA, wherever, you know, because people want to kick the tires a little bit. And but going forward in terms of, you know, managing and creating these strategies congruently, you don't necessarily have to work the same way you used to. And it's fascinating to be able to show folks what they thought, in fact, was limited or true. And when you show them another way and they learn and then get all the parties involved, how much the scales can come off people's eyes. So
what's really interesting to me about this kind of intentional design for handling money, again, in the typical traditional approach, the big box approach, you'll talk to your guy at JP Morgan or whoever it is, and then if you have another need, you'll call your banker and handle that, and you call your insurance guy or whatever it is, right? Risk management guy. Those are all different conversations. Those are all conversations without the other parties involved. And each time you're having to help each one understand what you're doing in the other spheres. To have this under one tent and to manage it synergistically like this, it seems like it's one of those moments where you're like, how were we not doing this all along? But it almost never happens unless you're in that world where it's the family wealth, which tends to be a lot of wealth, and those families know from generation to generation, this is how you handle substantial wealth. But it's a concept that most people are not even aware of.
right, because most people are just pitched an idea like retirement, or pitched an idea of this, that, or the other, and they're really not, the advisors aren't really asking a lot of questions to find out ultimately what the client wants, you know. So if you just give people what they want, show them how to become financially independent, stay financially independent, be charitable if that's their you know, modus operandi, how they operate, you know, facilitate that. And what's most interesting is 2 out of 3 business owners is shopping for a different CPA. Now, if I was a CPA, I'd be worried about that. Why would I be worried? Because the reason 2 out of the 3 CPA or business owner clients are looking for another CPA is they wish their accountant would give them more proactive advice, not just put the right number in the right box, but truly help them sit down with a group of professionals and steer this family generational wealth in a way that it never goes away. And that, to me, is the most exciting thing. I mean, we spoke to probably 90 accounting professionals, like in the given New Orleans market, only to find 3
Wow.
that really were thinking this way. And the AICPA is saying you need to change, you need to give more value. The business owner clientele is wanting that, even though they're not speaking it clearly where the CPAs. And so the beautiful thing about Pelican Family Office and this infrastructure is we can facilitate that. And a lot of times you don't need to get rid of the people on your team. They just need to be encouraged and helped in totality, not just on their own. And what happens many times is you find inefficiencies and waste and duplication that's going on. And many times we can save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars in a family's lifetime by just making sure you're not having this waste disappear from the family balance sheet.
Interesting. Really interesting. So where are we going from here? Where's the world going from here? You know, we talked about there being a lot of tricks, a lot of treats out there, a lot of dangers. We referenced the news today with Iran. It seems that central banks are bulking up on safe haven assets again, very quietly, mind you. Some of the sources that they're getting tons of gold from are not even listed. So when you watch world money makers and policy makers go in that heavy on something, you know they're doing it for a reason. That tells us safety is going to be important in this environment. What are the best principles if a family's walking into your office with substantial wealth and they say, Jack, I need a team that has all those elements? Where are you starting with them right now, and what are some of the things that are front and center?
Well, the first thing we do that's really inevitable is we got to take this junk drawer that you have in your kitchen, even a family worth 100 million, 200 million, or 5 million. They've got this junk drawer of a lot of stuff, and they don't know how it all works together. And you know, you got one in your kitchen, I got 2. And when my wife opens it, it makes me cringe. But what we can do is organize it, keep it all together, start asking questions about it. So
a lot of times you can't get the drawer open, though.
That's true.
That's probably true with you too. Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, the reality is the first step is just understanding, who the players are on the team. Are they really functioning to the level that they should? You know, we had a family here that we're doing some planning with, and the investment advisors were awesome. Even though we have those licenses, if the guy's doing a good job, why not have him on the team? So I think what's going to change more than not is the advisors or people in the financial space that aren't operating in a congruent team-based works. And I don't mean just within your own, you know, brand that's on your, they're in trouble, meaning commoditization is coming. You saw that during COVID with Robinhood and other things. That next generation is starting to ask a lot of questions about, are they really getting the value from the advice they're getting? And more times than not, where, you know, the strategies and the principles are really, we believe, having these discussions on an ongoing basis, not let's just check in once a year. So many of our clients went from working with people where they meet maybe once every couple of years, fragmented, to now we're meeting monthly or quarterly or bi-weekly. And so working with these professionals, especially the accountant that is the most trusted advisor, or should be one of them, we can do things together in a way that, you know, the way the model is built right now, you just can't, because it's with XYZ, and I don't want to use brands, but you know what I mean. And they're all built inevitably for the financial institutions to win.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you look at any of the major holders of Apple or Google, just notice a consistent theme. And there's a couple companies that are going to control most of the wealth in this world. And what my partner Matt and I have started to do is the only way to beat those big entities in the long run is with your pocketbook. So if you don't believe in their methodologies and ESG and some of this other stakeholder value versus shareholder value that's being propagated and promoted, then there is a different way.
Fascinating. I like it. So one of the things I'm passionate about, as you know, and I think it fits perfectly for this big tent approach, a lot of folks are never introduced to Number one, safe haven investments, because it's outside the scope of big box investment houses. They don't know anything about it, and so they scare people away from it. And two, they never have the opportunity to guide people to what I call passion-based investment, collectible assets. Investments ought not be, I'm convinced, just digits on a page. Assets are about a person's life, which is about their story, about their journey. So many people have interests that run deep. Maybe they grew up like I did in a family where my grandfather was into British cars and motorcycles. Some people grow up in families that are passionate about art or about music. Each of those spaces and a whole lot of other spaces, sports arena, for example, have value attached to them, whether it's baseball cards or rare cars or rare coins or fine art, you name it. And when you see your way to take some of the wealth away from the big box template and get involved in building your wealth story through a hobby or a live with investment, it really enlightens people's idea of wealth, and it gives a bit more life and color to their whole investment approach. So, as this idea is growing, I hope that's something you guys are looking more and more at. We have seen in COVID, as I referenced, more people waking up to that reality. People realize, hey, we don't know that we're promised tomorrow, and indeed, none of us are. And so, why am I just trying to amass more digits on a page? I have enough resources. I can do something I'm really passionate about. And when you do that, it can actually do well as an investment, though that's not the chief motivation for most people who are doing it right.
It's funny you say that. I mean, if you got $10 million and you're in the Mojave Desert, what good is it? But if a water truck drives by, you now have a use for that money. You're pretty dehydrated. And that's what we tell clients a lot of times is, yeah, digits on a page are great, but what are you doing to really put that money to work in things that you believe in, causes, hobbies,
Yeah.
things such as that. There's a guy in my neighborhood that collects, got an unbelievable collection of wine. And it gives him enjoyment. He
Yeah.
enjoys these wines. I mean, it's quite an amassed collection, and it's appreciated obviously immensely. But he didn't do it just for that alone. And like you
Right.
said, it had a use. It had a value. Things that your
Yep.
grandfather instilled in you. And I think that's what we're missing, and that's kind of what we're promoting in this family office or virtual family office environment is getting people tied into really their life's calling and mission, charitable,
Yep.
collectible, multiple generational wealth.
Yep.
So things continue on. And even when we pass this world, your name will never die.
Yeah.
And there's something special to that.
Yeah. Well, there's much more to talk about, and hope this is just the first conversation of many, but it's fascinating to hear this approach. I think it's probably new information to a lot of people. So tell us how folks can get in touch with you and take the next steps if they wanted to look deeper.
Yeah, we have a website, pelicanfo.com for family office, just like the Pelican. We're in Louisiana. Take a look around there, and you can kind of see the team and vast network that we have. Had done radio in the past, moving out of that sector and going to do more podcast and targeted stuff for this family office, because I believe more than ever that the right team of people around you, starting with the accountant and somebody like myself, can put you in a trajectory in place that you probably would have never believed you've gotten to. So, Bruce, I thank you for giving me the time and us to talk about kind of the craziness in this world going on and how to make sense of it all.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jack. We'll certainly do it again. And thank you to the listeners for joining us. This is wealthcurated.com. And we hope that you're keeping an eye toward the risk, keeping a foot toward the opportunities, and investing in something you're passionate about, and doing it all in a way that makes sense for you and your family for the long term. Thanks, Jack. We'll do it again soon. Take care.
Thank you.